Like dominoes cascading in a line, the dollar is losing its hegemony every passing day. Let's just say that China has a plan and it's working like a charm. In this brave new world, the new economic order lies at the mercy of four horsemen of the dollar apocalypse. The four BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, are at the forefront of displacing the dollar from the global financial system, and their alternative reserved currency is the big new thing. So what's happening? BRICS supremacy. The year is 2001, and despite the rising security challenges, the United States of America is galvanizing economic superpower whose supremacy can't be undone. That's when a Goldman Sachs economist, Jim O'Neill, makes a bold prediction. According to Jim, by the year 2050, four countries will dominate the global economy as a bloc. Unlike the European Union, these allies won't be interested in forging political alliances. Instead, they'd put money where their mouth is and single-handedly shuffle the cards for the economic superpower. Jim O'Neill called this economic coalition BRIC. The acronym indicates Brazil, Russia, India, and China. In 2010, South Africa joined the league to rename the alliance as BRICS. And in the year 2023, BRIC countries are on the verge of dethroning the dollar as the world's reserve currency. Sure, we're 17 years away from 2050 and, well, Rome wasn't built in a day. You see, BRICS is a powerful force in today's economic landscape. After all, they've picked up a fight with the biggest and baddest playground bully, the United States of America. While the coalition is certainly focused to optimize trade routes and boost free trade agreements, it's their disdain for the dollar that has brought them together. The newest item on the agenda is the active de-dollarization of the financial markets and bilateral trade agreements. Even though the global campaign is initiated by the BRICS countries, they've found unlikely allies in Saudi Arabia, Iran, and other oil-producing nations. For the first time in our recent history, dollars stand in harm's way, and the rapid de-dollarization escalation has taken more robust initiatives than ever. In one of the harshest blows to the US currency, Brazil signed a bilateral agreement with China to strictly trade in yuan, effectively displacing the dollar. That's right, in the blink of an eye, the largest Latin American economy was successful in ditching the dollar to give an unprecedented boost to the Chinese yuan. And then secondly, Russia was able to replace the US dollar with the yuan as its main trading currency as well. The implications for Washington are severe, but the biggest blow was yet to come, the new reserve. It's a new dawn for the BRICS countries and naturally the global economic order. In a striking event, Jim O'Neill's prediction is almost a reality, and his worst critics are shocked beyond belief. While this was always on the charts, these developing economies were slow in taking initiative, but today Russia is spearheading a new BRICS reserve currency that would effectively kill the dollar's hegemony in the global financial markets. Yep, Putin really said checkmate. For years, Russia was rallying support to dethrone the dollar to create an alternative trading currency that was more flexible and apolitical in nature. In other words, Vladimir Putin was garnering allies to create a non-Western back channel that was free from the reins of the IMF and the World Bank. The way Russia puts it, it seems like the reserved currency has been America's most potent weapon in controlling the trading accessibility of its rivals. And of course, if the United States of America has one classic arch rival, it's the most realistic manifestation of the Soviet Union today. So what's happening? Virtually, Russia is trying to stabilize the trading markets through an alternative financial system that has no reliance on the dollar whatsoever. In doing so, BRICS countries would have more liquidity to forge intra-trade relations that won't be impacted by their respective foreign relations with the US. As of now, the process behind the de-dollarization isn't simple, yet it's not impossible either. Essentially, Russia wants to harness the BRICS nations' local currencies to make one reserve currency that would beat IMF's Special Drawing Rights, or SDR. Now, these are some big, heavy jargon for sure, but at the heart of it, the process is simple. In the status quo, almost all nations rely on SDR to make money off their assets without affecting the marketplace. Russia wants to take that advantage away from the US. Easier said than done, right? Of course, there's still a long way to go, and this isn't Putin's first rodeo. However, it would be unfair to say that circumstances aren't different this time. King dollar and sanctions. You see, Russia's biggest narrative building against the US dollar is just one word: sanctions. Historically, the US has used the dollar to punish countries that don't seem to accept its moral authority. At least that's what Putin believes. Well, that's one way to put it. But Russia's recent campaign against the dollar has everything to do with the war in Ukraine. When the Red Army made its way to Kyiv, Washington was quick to ban the use of the dollar for buying Russian imports. That particular maneuver left Moscow with no arrays to trade and strike bilateral agreements with its limited allies. As a result, Russia's GDP shrunk dangerously, and, well, that's pretty unhelpful when you're trying to win a war against NATO-backed Ukraine. Yet Russia isn't the only country to voice out its disdain for King Dollar and its measly subjects called the sanctions. A quick glance into the American affinity with sanctions would suggest a pattern. Over the years, US governments have imposed strict sanctions on their geopolitical rivals to severely undermine their economic capacity. And no one knows this tale better than Iran, which has become a classic study for non-humanitarian sanctions. So it isn't a surprise that many Middle Eastern and Gulf governments want to push for an alternative financial system that has no scope for economic strikes. When Russia pitches the BRICS reserve currency to its allies, it makes sure to sing the song that everyone likes. Putin has assured his fellow leaders that the alternative currency isn't a power factor. If anything, the collective bargaining power would ensure that no single country uses the reserve currency card as political leverage. As long as no one interferes with Russia's endeavors to increase its territory, everything would be fair and square. And yep, that's why Iran jumped onto the de-dollarization train real quick. The China coalition. It's true that Russia is making the most moves on this complicated chessboard of the long haul. But it's China who set the game and made the first fatal move. When it comes to BRICS nations, it's a silent rule that orders come from Beijing, and they must be followed right to the T. And well, the leadership of the de-dollarization campaign isn't disputed. As a rule of thumb, the strongest and the biggest economy calls all of the shots. And that's one responsibility that Beijing fulfills really well. For years, the Chinese Communist Party has tried to bring attention to the pitfalls of the dollar. According to government officials, the fact that the dollar is a stable currency is nothing but an illusion for the United States to hold on to its undeserved global leadership. It might be disappointing for some, but China's argument definitely packs a punch. The biggest case in point is the 2008 financial meltdown that was triggered by America's largely unregulated banks. While the dollar was the saving grace for those highly turbulent times, the crisis exposed a dark, untrustworthy side of asset management in the US. The dollar isn't a risk-free asset as it makes itself to be. Plus, another factor that China repeatedly points out is the series of bank failures in the US. So let's talk about it a bit. Even today, the dollar is popular for one straightforward reason. The liquid free markets of the US are highly compatible with many financial institutions across the globe. Since the US promises to maintain price stability and offer safe investment options, developing economies flocked up to Washington for all the right reasons. Now, the problem is the US has had 563 bank failures in the last 22 years. And that fact is enough to shake up everyone's confidence in the dollar-based transaction system. The recent Silicon Valley Bank fiasco shows us that Washington is an extremely vulnerable place. So its inherent instability can profoundly hurt trading channels that rely on rigid price stability. This is exactly why oil-producing nations like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Iran, and so on are looking for alternative payment methods to sell their liquid gold. Oil is extremely vulnerable to price fluctuations, and the dollar isn't a safe haven. The fact that Saudi Arabia is looking to trade its oil in the Chinese yuan is the dollar's biggest defeat, and China has just begun. Do you think China would be successful in replacing the dollar with a BRICS currency? Let us know in the comments below. Give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to watch our next video.